he heard played. So this is a very significant musician that we're talking about tonight. In spite of his fame, the large amount of money he made, he died penniless. And he was buried in an unmarked grave in New York. And it sounds like the story of Mozart. It's very similar. Unmarked grave, and later reburied. He was buried at St. Michael Cemetery in Queens. And there they have a large monument to Joplin. And for the last 4 years, there's a Joplin celebration of his music, and ragtime lovers come from all over the country to hear this celebration. The same is true for Mozart. He has a large gravestone now. And certainly we have actually missed the boat on recognizing the importance of certain musicians and their contribution. Now, Joplin was basically self-taught. And this is very important because in Sedalia, he went to the George Smith College for Negroes. This was a college sponsored by the Methodist Church and largely German teachers. Very important because it's through this German teachers that Joplin learned European harmony. Nothing in Joplin is foreign from European harmony. Joplin actually rhythmically changed the direction of music, but harmonically it's really based on European music. And European music doesn't change until you go from Joplin to jazz, and jazz with added note chords and extension of harmony begin to change harmonies. But with Joplin, it's the rhythm. With jazz, it's a chord structure. The two things are related because one grows out of the other. There are no rhythms used in jazz that Joplin didn't use in his ragtime, which is extremely important and interesting. Now let's look closer at Joplin, who's been called, Joplin is the American Chopin. Now that's an interesting statement. You have to start off in talking about enculturation. If you think that Chopin is more important than Joplin, you have a perfect right to do so, and if you like Chopin better than Joplin, that's fine. But if you think Chopin is better than Joplin, you're sick. In other words, enculturation. The poet M.B. Tolson once said, if you put Napoleon's strategy in the mind of a pygmy, he would be master of the bush and not the European continent. Very important. Master of the bush and not the European continent. We all are what we know. The advance of civilization is always based on the interchange of cultures. We go back. First civilization is African. Everybody thinks civilization started with the Greeks. No, the Greeks studied in Africa. They studied mathematics and science before they developed their own systems. We don't talk about that. We think civilization started with the Greeks. It didn't start that. History is not a pyramid in which at the top of the chain you see Beethoven, Mozart, and Haydn. It's a ball that keeps changing, and every civilization comes to the top and goes around. We're seeing that. We're seeing that now. America's going around. So it's very important to have this concept of change that comes to our society. Now, Joplin's rags were introduced to the world through sheet music and the importance of the piano. I want to talk about that for a minute. It was popular at the time of Joplin for every home to want to have a piano in the parlor. A piano in the parlor and a daughter that could play sheet music from the 5 and 10 cent store, and this sheet music was ragtime, And this was a form of entertainment, not the television or the radio. This form of entertainment by young girls increased the popularity of ragtime. Now, ragtime is predominantly black musicians, a few whites, but ragtime is created by black musicians. When I say black musicians, I don't want you for 1 minute to think I'm talking about black music history. I'm talking about American music history. You have to understand that in advance. Everything I say is about the history of music in America. I may say black music, but I'm talking about the history of American music. Now, Joplin enabled James Reesher to go to Paris in the First World War with his Hellfighters band. They ragged up or jazzed up marches. The French heard it. The music of Debussy and Ravel very much influenced by the presence of this American music. And it's not just in France. Stravinsky is also influenced by this music. So we're talking about globalization and a man that changed the attitude of music in the world. I want to start off by letting my accompanist play our first piece, which is the Maple Leaf Rag, and this is Joplin in 1899. Now, this ragtime flourished from 1895 to 1915, 20 years, only a 20-year period, a brief period, but it's certainly very important. This is Joplin's Maple Leaf Rag. piece. First, I want to give you a definition of music, which I always use and which is universally accepted. Music is intensified speech. Music is intensified speech. And I want to give you an example of what I'm talking about. You have logogenic or logical music. A baby is taught to sing mommy, daddy, mommy, daddy. That's all on the beat, all on the beat. Logical speech. Then you have pathogenic speech. Speech born out of passion. Take the sentence, I hate you. I hate you. Hate, you notice this is the word, the line doesn't come up like mommy, daddy, it goes up. I hate you. The emphasis on hate. It's on the offbeat and it's held longer than I. Hate twice long. 1, 2, 3, 4. I hate you. I hate you. That is a very important pattern in the music of Scott Joplin. Now let's look at Scott Joplin's music closer. James, if you would just play the left hand of the beginning of the B section of page 2. I just want a short example. Because what that demonstrates is the German march, or what we refer to as the Umpa style. Note, chord, note, chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the emphasis is on the offbeat, 2 and 4, because the first note is a bass note. And then you have the horns coming in with the chord on the second beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you, in your mind, you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. You're counting cut time. You reduced everything to 2 beats. But James is counting 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And he has to count that because he's looking at 2 and 4. The second thing I want to point your attention to is the second beat in the first measure, the second beat. Just that one beat. No, right hand, yes, I'm sorry. No, James. In the beginning, the first measure.
The very beginning? The very beginning?
Yeah, the very beginning, the second beat.
Oh, okay.
So that's the second beat. The second beat. Yeah, badada. Yeah, that's the beat I want.
We didn't work this out ahead of time.
If you look at presidents' names, we have historically been British citizens. Our first president, George Washington. George Washington. Now, you notice there's 2 beats, George Washington. The first beat is a single note. Triple it, George, triple it. 3 beats on the second count. Notice that. Now, we look, the next president, Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln. Triple it, 1, 2. Triple it, 1, 2. So now you see that the beats of presidents' names emphasize 1, 2, or 3 beats in one count. Very important. So you see what we have been used to. Get Franklin Roosevelt, triple it 1, 2, Franklin Roosevelt. We also get John F. Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, 2 beats. Then we have President Donald Trump. The music, no, the music speaks for itself. 2-bit president, 2 beats. I mean, it's not, I don't have to explain anymore. But before you got Donald Trump, this is where it gets real interesting. We had Barack Obama. Barack Obama. Let's pick the first name. Remember, instead of counting 1, 2, 1, 2, you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first name is Barack. 1, 2, Barack. Barack Obama. Barack Obama. Notice the second name, Obama. Now, my wife and I had the privilege to go to Cuba for a premier man, and our friends presented us with this tag. And you notice it says Havana. Havana, H-A-B-A-N-A. That was the original spelling of that city's name. That's right. We all on the same page. Havana, Mobombo, Mobombo, Mandela, Obama, Kenyatta, same thing. So this pattern, which is African, had been in existence long before Obama was born. But it's African. So what we have in the left hand, an Oompa style, and in the right hand, a African style. This is the integration of music called cross-culturalization. A German left hand and an African right hand. And the emphasis in the right hand will be on beats 2 and 4. Now, there's one other place I would like to talk about. At the beginning of page 2, at the top of the page, just play the first 2 notes in the right hand, first chord. No, this is the trio section.
Oh, the trio section.
Yeah. No, the bum, 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 bum. Yeah, that's right. There's those first 2 chords. There's no left hand, right? Just the right hand. Notice the rhythm. Bum, 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 bum. You say Charleston, Charleston. Off the beat, it's on AA. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Charleston, Charleston. Bum, bum. That pattern has dominated jazz. If you listen to the music of Count Basie, Benny Goodman, all doing the swing airs, the big band, that was the basic pattern they used in terms of creating swing. Bum, bum. That, and it exists in Joplin. In the trio section. Now let me talk about form. Form exists as a result of sentences coming together, just like literature. When you have a sentence and you add another sentence to it, you begin to accumulate a certain number of ideas. And these ideas form a paragraph. So when I say that the structure for Joplin's Maple Leaf Rag is A, B, A, C, D, and this is the structure of the first 3 rags. What I'm saying is that in A is a whole section made up of a lot of sentences. And what you get to create contrast is that you go to another key, another tonal area. So you go from one key, then another key for the B section, then you can go back to A, or you may go to C or D, the different keys. But each key is differentiated by the use of a new tonal center. So this creates a sense of moving to something different. And I think that, oh, there's one other thing I wanted to mention. In the second measure, the first two measures, the first beat, play that. No, the second measure, the first beat of the first measure, the second measure of the first section.
Oh, the first section, the second measure?
Yeah, second measure, second beat.
So that's,
That's it. Yeah, that's it. That's all I want. That's what we refer to as an arpeggio. Instead of playing all the notes together as a chord, he plays them separately. Da 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 da, do mi so do. I mean, so the line is made up of chord tones, and this is a part, an integral part of a lot of Joplin's melodies. At this time, I think we're ready to have a repeat performance of Scott Joplin, Maple Leaf Rag.
okay. I am so nervous.
easy winners. And in parentheses, Scott Joplin wrote a ragtime two-step. You're still in the march mode. And this is 1901 Joplin. What I find particularly interesting in this piece is that the melody starts off with Obama, and then it's a short Obama. It's what we musically refer to it as a diminution. In other words, you can put things at half the time or twice the time, augmentation. And Joplin does examples before, so I'll talk about them as we go through the piece. Play the first two measures. Yeah, that's it. You hear ba-dum. You hear it, so it's a quicker version of what you heard in the first measure. This is interesting. This is extremely popular. Easy winner march. I received a call from about a week ago from the New York Times, and they wanted to talk to me about Marvin Hamlish and his use of ragtime. And of course, most of us know that he used Scott Joplin's music without mentioning his name. And it was a steal, to put it frankly. And he got all the praise, but it was really Joplin's music. And I told him that this is just the tip of the iceberg. In other words, Joplin deserves a lot more credit than just stealing of ragtime. I mean, and this will develop as we go and I talk about it. Now, I have had 2 interviews with the New York Times. And they tell me that this interview will be published a month from now. That's what they told me. But I got news for you. They usually don't publish what I say. And of course, I mean, you have to ask them why. But what I say, I know to be true. And I think too often we live our lives and we actually don't give credit to black musicians for what they did. And of course, black achievement is highly undervalued, seldom spoken about, seldom recognized, but regardless of what the society does, the facts still remain the same. An example, Scott Joplin wrote the first indigenous American opera. He wrote 2 operas, Guest of Honor, then American, Guest of Honor was the first one, and Treemonisha was the second opera. The first opera was totally lost. Joplin had the wisdom to publish the second opera, Treemonisha, and that's why we know it has survived. Gershwin saw Joplin's opera in New York, the published piano score. So we know that Gershwin was influenced by Joplin. So what I'm telling you now is that the history of opera in America starts with Scott Joplin in 1911, and about 20 years later, Gershwin with Porgy and Bess. Now, there are loads of operas before that time. All of them are based on European music, European themes, and not American opera. Joplin has American music, American theme, black life, Treemonisha, black woman was seeking education for uneducated people. And in the score itself, there are dance steps. It's real slow drag. Joplin wrote how to do the steps. So you don't come any more American than that. Nothing in the literature, Joplin is the first one to write dance steps in the score. The French composers did it years before. But Joplin actually is the first American composer to wrote dance steps in the score for his opera Treemonisha, and that's why that opera is so important. Wrote it in 1911, 1971. We did the premiere with Robert Shaw. I'll talk about that later. But now, easy winners. Obama's motives and also the opinionated chords. But there's one thing I want to call your attention to is in the bass line, in the C section, James, the third page, the second score from the bottom, bass line, that chromaticism. Yes, that's it, just that. That bass line is very important because it indicates where Obama is, where Scott Joplin is going. Joplin was fascinated with the bass line, and he could have stuck to the 1-2 oompa style, but it begins to change, and this is the first indication of that chromatic line, and this is why it's so important. Now, I wanted to talk about the next rag, which I think is probably one of the most beautiful pieces in the literature, and it was written by Scott Joplin in Solus. Solus was written in 1909, yeah, good. He calls it a Mexican serenade. Now you have to realize that at this time Americans were interested in the World's Fair that occurred in Chicago, and we had a fascination with places we didn't know. There was a popular piece called My Little China Doll. And of course, the composer knew nothing about China. And of course, in Joplin's case, he knew nothing about Mexican serenades, but it's called a Mexican serenade. But it's not Mexican at all. It's really based on the tango. Now, the tango, people associated with the habanera and Carmen. But Scott Joplin was referring to the tango in terms of South America, because the tango was made famous in Argentina. In fact, it's the national dance of Argentina. So the tango is very interesting because I told you that the beats are divided up 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, boom, beep, boom. You notice 1, 2, 3, boom. That's the second note, and then he leaps into a high note, and then he leaps into a low note. This is just play the bass line of yeah. That emphasis on that fourth offbeat is the thing that makes the tango have to have its swing. Yeah, good. And now, and the other thing I want to mention, in the right hand, Joplin becomes more chromatic. By chromatic, I mean he uses notes that move in half steps. Now you know it as pardon me, boys, is that the Chattanooga choo-choo? Pardon me, boys, that's moving in half steps. But Joplin goes up in half steps and comes down in half steps, and in this ingenious way. And what I find so fascinating is that these 4 notes, what we call in music a tetrachord, 4 notes, the 4 notes. Yeah. No, the second beat going up. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a tetrachord. Well, pardon me, boys. And that's what you could identify that. But it's chromaticism, and this chromaticism is extremely sophisticated in terms of Joplin's Solus Mexican rag. It just calls it, as I said, the Mexican serenade. Now, another thing about this is that he begins to expand the tango. If you play the first measure, Yeah, okay. Now go over to play in D, the D section, page 4, the third score. No. Page 4.
Page 4.
Yeah, the D section, the way it takes a large leaps in the tango melody. You see
Page
it?
4 on the, what the, means.
Yeah,
That part?
yeah. So okay, good. So he's expanded the leap. Now, I told you when we talked about pathogenic music, we talked about leaps and accents, creating more excitement. So Joplin begins to leap all over the place to create the sense of movement in a certain section. This is the beautiful solace, and I think the main thing about it is it's the use of arpeggios, chords broken up, and the chromaticism that exists in the tetrachord. particular rag, in the second section, B section, the baseline is beginning to be changed. The tango suddenly gets a pickup to the first note. James. Yeah, in other words, rum, rum, rum. Yeah, all of those notes are pickup notes. So Joplin is moving away from the oompa style, the note chord style that he was so familiar with. Now we come to the magnetic rag, our last piece. The magnetic rag was written in 1914, and unlike the other rags were all A, B, A, C, D. This has a structure of A, B, C, D, A, and then a coda, a small section on the end, which Joplin is expanding the structural form that he's been using, because all other works with the same structure as Maple Leaf Rag. Now, also, Joplin takes advantage of the use of major, minor keys. The first section is in a major key. The second section is in a minor key. Minor key. The first section is in a major key. Yeah, you can hear the difference. In other words, the minor key, the third is lowered. In other words, that's all we say. Go back to Mom and Dad, that's the favorite interval that Brahms used, lullaby and good night. The minor third is a very popular interval. And Joplin does something very unusual in the bass line. He begins to have what one would call a walking bass. This is the C section, the first measure. This is very important. Yes. Every other note, but this is what we call a walking bass. And that is the forerunner to boogie woogie and also stride piano, which was made famous by Earl Hines. In other words, the bass begins to smooth out, and rather than no chord, it begins to smooth out and get straight. So Joplin was very influential in predicting that in this particular piece. Another thing I'd like to say is that you still have the arpeggiated chords and the Obama figures that are throughout this piece. I think you know him by now. He starts off with Obama and then Obama again. The thing I like about this piece is that the new structure that Joplin challenged himself with, because prior to that, Joplin always thought of music being based on the structure of the third movement of symphonies. In other words, the minuet and then the trio. The trio usually is on Joplin's Maple Leaf Rag is marked trio. So he's thinking in terms of minuet and trio. In the use of expanded forms in this piece enabled Joplin to have some concept of what to do when he started writing the opera, because he needed expanded forms to cover the duration of what he was thinking about over a long period of time. So it's a very important piece. Other than that, I think we'll play this, and I will be glad, James and I will be glad to answer any questions you may have on anything that was said here tonight. James?
We'll play it like you'll help.
comment on anything that was said or played in the hands yesterday.
You probably should tell us a little bit about your association with Robert Shaw.
Oh,
Repeat the question.
he asked me about my association with Robert Shaw and Premonition. I'm glad you asked that question because I wanted to talk about Shaw tonight. Shaw is probably one of the greatest conductors the world has ever seen. And I know you're shocked by I'm saying that, but I'm going to prove it to you. Everybody thinks of Robert Shaw as just a choral conductor. And that's one of the worst things in the world, to mistake this talent. I'll go back to what Toscanini said. Toscanini said, "This is my successor." Now, if Toscanini said that, it seemed to me the American public ought to listen. We didn't listen in Atlanta, we wanted to get rid of it. Now, let me tell you what he did. In Shaw's training, everybody says he's self-taught. He wasn't self-taught. He went from Pomona to Fred Waring to Broadway Billy Rose and then to the Cleveland Symphony. What Shaw brought to classical music, and this is very important, American sensibilities to the classical music of the world. I'll repeat that. American sensibilities to the classical music of the world. He didn't change the music at all, but he brought to it this sense of Americanness. Now, if every German has heard from Otto Klemperer to von Karajan, the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven. If they know Beethoven's Ninth, it wasn't until Shaw took the Atlanta Symphony to the Berlin Wall, and they performed the Beethoven Ninth. The people went wild. Anybody will tell you this. The people went wild. American sensibilities. Not the same thing that the Germans have been listening to all this time. American sensibilities to the performance of music. Shaw had brought that. Now, he wasn't just Beethoven. He did a Bach B minor mass in Russia. Standing ovation, audience clapped. You can tell this is a true story. You told me. Yes. They went down, washed up, came to go out of the place, the audience still on their feet applauding. Bach B minor mass. What did he bring to the work? They knew the piece. Everybody knows Bach B minor mass. Shaw brought to music something we have never seen before, nor I hope American conductors, which we don't value incidentally. In fact, we don't even value American music. My example is the New England composer, what's his name, Lord? Ives, Charles Ives. Yeah, I mean, we don't play Ives. I mean, one of the greatest composers ever lived. We don't play him. We don't value American music, no American conductors. Shaw brought to music these sensibilities, which are recorded, I might add, that made him certainly one of the greatest conductors the world has ever seen. And most people won't talk about that. Now, Premonition, when I had him as my conductor, I knew I was on the easy road because he and Wendell Whalum chose the singers. Catherine Dunham created the dance and choreography. We had an outstanding cast of singers. And that performance received rave reviews from everything. New York Times, Constitution, anything you named it, there's a tendency. It received rave reviews, mainly due to Shaw's interpretation of the music. Not my orchestration, this is my orchestration. Bill Barker was editing, not that, but Shaw's interpretation of the music made it become certainly one of the most important operas ever written. Yet we don't value American music. We don't value American composers. We do value rock and roll. I mean, I can name other things we value of little importance because they come and go. But I certainly think Robert Shaw is very important, and I was very important to have a chance to work with him on a lot of on several projects. Yes. The first year I came on the Rockefeller grant, and that paid for my being there. The second year, Shaw put up his own money for me to stay here. The third year, I was a Danforth visiting professor at Morehouse. That enabled us to do Tremontici. So I was here for 3 years. Yeah, so. But I think often I think of how great he was as a composer. There's going to be a documentary on his life for great Americans, I think, coming up soon in the future. But we have never got to the point where we recognize American musicians and their contribution as being American and important.
Can I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to say this is hell. TJ's a national treasure, and he wouldn't say this, but Tremontici, the version that George Gershwin heard was a piano score, and it wasn't scored until the man to my left, your right, scored it, and scored it in a character that was true to Joplin. And to do that, you have to live, eat, breathe, think, know Joplin, and you did that. And then the combination of that with Robert Shaw has provided an arrangement that's just beyond the beyond. TJ, you're a national treasure. To even stand up here and do this show with you is just, it's amazing. I kind of listening and enjoying it. But I think that the balance of culture is extremely important, and I think we need to advocate for that through our music, because music just brings people together, and I really enjoy that. So I want to put that in. Thank you, TJ, for arranging Tremontici.
Any other questions?
How long have I been playing ragtime? Actually, when Joshua Rifkin came out with his, we put that in our show before the Sting, and so I've been playing it since the 1975-ish, and I did that, and then I played. In fact, this is the book that I think this is the first edition of this that came out around the time of the Sting, and that this is the complete works. It's rather interesting, and the notes are interesting, but they're not at all contemporary. And I've always enjoyed it, but I've been kind of a barroom player who fiddles with classical, and this is just a Mount St. Everest to try to put this together with the jazz feel and then the classical piece. And the left hand is like in Europe, and the right hand is in America and Africa, and then some hands in the middle that's in the Caribbean. And I just and so from a player's point of view, there's a lot of interesting challenges, and we really don't know fully how Joplin might have interpreted himself. The piano roll, I think, TJ, you probably know more about this than I do, but the piano roll we have of his playing was at the very end of his life when he was suffering terribly. It is not a terribly good quality, and probably not indicative. We don't think he improvised, and I don't think he did circus showy kind of things, but I do think there's probably some liberty with the shape of the melody and the flow of the, and I try to demonstrate a little bit of that as a player, and also dynamics. There are many things that can be done with dynamics with Joplin, and I even experimented playing the same thing quite differently. And that's the fascinating part about Joplin, is it invites you to that kind of interpretation. You play it and discover it as you're playing it, except when TJ's looking at you, your palms are sweating, you have all these people out there thinking you're some kind of professional pianist. So I would, this is quite an honor, but ragtime is just an incredible art form. Thank you for asking that. Other questions for TJ? Nate, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Will. Thank you, Dr. Anderson. My question, if I was to have one shot to expose students to Scott Joplin, and I was only able to pick one piece, what would you suggest that I do?
One piece for the piano.
To expose Georgia students to to Scott Joplin, I'm asking, what would he suggest as the piece that I would choose?
I would choose soulless because it's slow. I would choose soulless because it's slow and it's more complicated. And it has more in it than the other eggs. More things to point out to your students than any other piece. Any other questions? Yes, it was. I would choose magnetic rep. I mean, there's so many you can choose. It depends on what you're looking for, yes. Any other questions? If not, I'd like to thank you for being a good audience.